Hey, everybody. Here today, we are going to be discussing fiscal year for your churches. Dun, dun, dun. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it matter? Well, we're going to delve into that here today on simplifiedchurch.com. You can check us out at www.simplifiedchurch.com about all things Simplified Church, the cool things that we get to do for you to help make ministry much more simpler for you. I am Stephen Boster, along with Mr. Josh Henry, who is the chief simplifier at simplifiedchurch.com. And here today, we are discussing some questions that people have been asking about fiscal year. Does it matter when my fiscal year is, or when is the best time to do my fiscal year? Josh, I've heard some people do it. They keep up with like the school year. Fiscal year, like they do seasons, like, oh, we do our big launch in the fall, kind of a thing, and wrap it up with Easter. And just since summer is so short, or summer is, giving is down, so I want to make sure my whole year is different, or I want to make sure I keep up with January to December, or some churches pick a different time altogether, which is really interesting. Why is fiscal year important, and what are some pros and cons of each one of these frameworks, whether it be a fall beginning or a January beginning or in between?
Yeah. Well, I think really for me, and I'm just a simple guy, so I feel like I've heard all the arguments. I feel like I've been doing this long enough, and I've heard a lot of different perspectives on fiscal years and what to do. And from a simplistic standpoint, I still cannot bring myself to understand the value of anything other than using a calendar year as your fiscal year. So we'll start there. Hopefully I didn't play my hand and kind of tell everybody where I'm at.
You just get right to it, everybody. Going for the jugular. January beginning.
Right. And we hear a lot of that in churches. We get a lot of questions. It is one of those things we have to ask, as we take over church book, we partner with churches to do their bookkeeping and accounting. It's a very big piece of that to know what their fiscal year is. Some will do their fiscal year on a different date. And when you ask them why, it is because, well, that was the month that we sat down with the lawyer to file the papers, and we just decided to make that the start date of the church.
Okay.
There's that. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. And then the overwhelming majority, when I hear a church that wants to have a non-calendar fiscal year, they do so because it gets down to the whole December issue. Or whether or not it's the December issue. And what I mean by the December issue is that's when the bulk of giving comes in. That's when everybody catches up. That's when everybody realizes. So December becomes a big month for your church. So there's that issue. The other sub-issue related part of that becomes the summer issue that we talk about. And that is traditionally, and we'll put a link to the blog post in the comments or in the description or wherever we're going to put that below. The summer giving slump. It's real. It happens. People go on vacation. People are out of town. Kids are out of school. Schedules are messed up.
Yeah.
And those that don't have your faithful saints will continue to give, and they'll do it regardless of where they're at. The folks that are and we really need to make a video on the 5 types of givers that we have.
Coming soon, everybody. You heard it.
Pay attention to that, because there are definite types. And we'll call these folks 3s and below and when we get to that point. And they are the folks that are your occasional givers, or the folks that know they're supposed to give, but they're not uber committed to it. So anything will not. These are the folks that, there's a chance for rain today, we better not go to church. That kind of mentality, where they're just not those committed, faithful saints that you have in your church, and that's how I term them. Those are the folks that are always there. They're always you can rely on those people. Anyway, all that to say, I really chased a tangent on that one. I'm sorry, but just the summer giving, where people just I'm on vacation. I missed a Sunday. I didn't have my checkbook with me that Sunday. I'm out of my routine because I'm not taking the kids
Yeah.
to school and blah, 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 whatever that is. So there are those issues, but circling all the way back, long-winded way to say, those are really the two primary issues that I have been told, or that people have used as defenses
to do something
for
different than the January to
than to do
December.
a January to December fiscal. Yep.
Okay. What are the pros of having a January to December timeframe? Why is that much more better
Yeah.
than
Again,
some of the others?
like I've said, obviously that was a long-winded explanation as to maybe play my hand on why I'm just a proponent of just stick to the calendar, the January to December
Right.
one,
Right.
because you always know what year you're in. And what I mean by that is, if you have a non-calendar fiscal year, that question then comes up to say, well, what year are we in? Are we in the calendar says we're in 24, right? But oh no, we've already turned over. Now we are in our 25 year, and it's like, are you ahead of time? Are you always have to have those types of questions that come up.
Okay.
Your finance team, the people that are in this, when you're reviewing your reports, the guys that have been around that know how things are structured, they're looking at things, oh, this is great. Yeah, we're doing good. A new guy comes in to the finance team meeting, gets a report, and sees the year to date, and is going, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because the reports are either overextended or they're not. If you don't know, they're on a different fiscal year.
Right.
Obviously, those are extreme examples for simple solutions. But at the same time, I'm a simple guy. And if I don't have to add complexity, if I don't have to add questions, and I don't have to add other thinking to what I'm doing, then that's kind of where I want to go. And
doesn't it also affect even like contributions? Like when you're trying to track contributions that people are giving, because they need it for their taxes, which would be, it only goes by year, January through December. And so would they have to jump through extra hoops just to keep track of, well, wait a minute, our fiscal year is here, but this is really our giving year?
Yeah. Yes and no. I wouldn't necessarily say they're extra hoops, but those things don't change. The IRS isn't going to change your donor statement requirement just because you have a different fiscal year. The donor the donor's gift still resides inside of that calendar year. It has no bearing on what your organization's fiscal year is.
But
so
it
there's
would still
that.
add a certain level of additional tracking to a certain degree, because you're already thinking, oh, I've given their whole year, and I look at it from that point of view versus, the January-February timeframe. But yet our giving framework of what we tend to do when we have an outside the January-December framework. Like if I start mine in August for the back to school season to go in, kind of coincide with that. Well, I've got to think, oh man, okay, now wait a minute. What was my August to December? And now I need to go back to my other framework that I was tracking to keep.
Yep. It's very true. Now there are some caveats. There are some instances where you could say, let's just say it's a June. I'm going to make this up. You have a June 30th end of your fiscal year. There are some instances where you could say, hey, Mr. Donor, thank you. We have now ended our organization's fiscal year. Here is your donor report for our organization's fiscal year. Okay, you could do that. But when I speak about generosity and how to encourage generosity, the more often you're giving out donor statements, the better. It's a way to thank your donors. That exists. But at the same time, you would still need to come back potentially if that donor is not keeping track of their donations and give them a donor report at the end of the calendar year anyway, because their taxes are figured on the calendar year, not your fiscal year. So it's more work. It's more complexity. The other side of that that also comes into play, not only from a giving standpoint, but your payroll standpoint. The IRS doesn't change their reporting requirements for your employees based on your fiscal year. Q1 is still Q1, January through March. Q2 is still April through June. It's still the same,
So what
regardless
we're
of your.
saying is we're limiting any kind of communication explanations. In other words, well, we do this, but this is how the government needs it, or this is. So what we're saying, we're just putting it all in the same table, the same time frame, excuse me, just for ease of communication.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it just streamlines everything because, if you go back to look at your employment history, if you are taking it a report on what's it cost for you to retain your employees from that standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at it from the filings you had to make on those employees, it's going to be really hard to match that up to having a different organizational fiscal year, because they're not going to match. Whereas if you stick within that calendar fiscal year, the 941 that's due for your employment records after every quarter, those will match the same reports you are providing for your first fiscal quarter of that same year.
So there's no extra step of communicating going, oh, yes. Okay. Yes. You on the finance team, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah. We know that this is the quarter. This is what, this is the information, but we do our different fiscal year. So our quarter one is different than the quarter one report that we have to file, or, we get the information. Okay. Gotcha.
There's
now,
a lot. There's a
go ahead.
much, there's a lot few. I'm trying to think of the quick way to say this in grammar. There are much fewer. There are a lot fewer. You don't have to do the mental gymnastics of
Yeah.
where, same idea. What year are we in? What quarter? What quarter of that year? And
Yeah.
if
All
it
right.
just matches the calendar, it's just simpler.
So here's the big question. I'm a pastor. Let's just say I'm a pastor at a church, and like, oh man, I'm listening to you and I'm going, oh, we did do our July 1st start date for our fiscal year. What can I do to fix it? If it's better for us to have the January timeframe. And yeah, I hear what you're saying. It would ease up communications that we're not have to re-explain everything about our fiscal year being so different.
Yeah.
Whatever those reasons may be, or we're matching. Okay, it would help us match the quarterly statements that we need to do for payroll for the IRS. It will help us with the contribution statements, as far as being on the same page for everybody, or having to do the filings. So what do I do to change it? How can I change that then?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of going back to some of the previous videos we've done, it's just document. I mean, it is because it is a little bit different than, for instance, if you were a for-profit business and you're doing an annual tax return, on that return, you would tell the IRS what your fiscal year is, because you don't have that. It's a little bit simpler. So it really does come down to more of whatever the governing body of your church is, a vote of that governing body to deem to change it. Now,
okay,
there are some steps that would need to be taken for that. Then there are also some ways that, because no matter what you do, there's going to be an interim gap in there. There's going to be, okay, we shifted. You almost have to create a budget for that shifting time. So you might have a 6-month budget, for instance, if you're shifting to when we do have churches that, decide even against our best advice, when they decide to say, hey, we're going to go to a different fiscal year.
right.
There are some things that have to take place, and it's not an overnight change that can happen.
So what I hear you saying, though, is one, I got to check my church polity, whatever our governance is, or whatever maybe our bylaw state is. Right. Have those discussions to say, here's what we're doing and here's why. Number two, understand that, hey, there is going to be a gap framework, and we need to plan accordingly for that gap framework. But everybody knows we're on that gap framework to get us in play. And then, so if it's communicated, it's agreed upon, based upon the polity, we can plan for it. Planning for it doesn't seem like it's that big, because we're already doing, church, we should already be doing the budgets ourselves anyway, but just redeveloping our budget for the purpose of a gap. Yeah, it's kind of funny how some churches come back. It's like, we're going to do this. And well, we're going to go back to January kind of framework.
It's and gosh, we share this with our church partners almost every day. I have calls with churches all over the country. I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone a lot. It's amazing. And gosh, 17 years of doing this as this company, probably going on 20 to 25 years of ministry at this point doing it. There's not a how-to book on this for church finances and accounting. There's not a church bookkeeping for dummies book out there. And if you talk to 5 different accountants or even CPAs, you probably will get 5 different answers,
if not 6.
And I'm not even sure the IRS is super clear on what they want you to do. I'm pretty sure if you ask the IRS, you might get several different answers there. So there's a level to which this is the wild, wild west. And again, why I come back to the advice of let's just make it simple, just simplify it. We're pushing time here, but because I'm sure there's some that are going to watch this video and say, well, but yes, Josh, but from a cash flow standpoint, we don't like seeing that we are short every month of the year on our budget expectation to only have it come in at the last part of the year and do that. And my advice to that is that's not a fiscal year issue. That's a cash flow management budgeting issue. That is an issue of, watching your cash flow, understanding how to manage your cash flow, but then also understand your budget and plan accordingly, looking at your budget from a big picture standpoint. We've put together a budget course. We'll put that link in the description as well on how to structure and manage your church budget, because those types of things, a lot of times we get too narrow focused. We're looking at the individual month, or we're looking at the individual year, and that when that year ends, it's like we hit a brick wall, and it's like, no, over time, this is a bigger picture deal that we want to be considering things and looking at it from. And maybe I'm weird. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that because everyone would say yes. But, I just, for some reason, I see it different. And sometimes it's hard to articulate that of just being able to say, look, it's a bigger issue here, not so where we get so much into the minute details of this dollar in, that dollar out. We really want to look at it from a ministry standpoint and what we're doing as a entirety of our ministry.
Well, everybody heard it. Our goal is to try to help you simplify, streamline, make it simple. Let's not make it complicated. There's no need to. Asking the questions, why do we do what we do? And what's the point? What's the purpose? And obviously our goal at Simplify Church is to help simplify the admin, your finances, so that you have more time for ministry. And we hope this has been a blessing to you, and look forward to this. Please check us out our website at www.simplifychurch.com. There you will find more information about the services that we provide, but also you'll see all the resources that we have as well, just free resources available out there. And we've got some other stuff in the link description below. So thanks again for joining us, Josh. Thanks for your insights. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
All right, everybody, be blessed. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.